The metal collar around Jake Morrison's neck buzzed with a warning shock. He had been walking too slowly for the alien overseer's liking. Jake gritted his teeth and picked up his pace, the heavy mining equipment clanking against his back. Around him, dozens of other humans moved through the dim tunnels of the mining complex, their faces covered in dust and exhaustion. It had been 68 years since the Veilthan came to Earth. Jake's grandfather used to tell stories about the time before, when humans lived freely on their home planet. But those were just stories now. Jake had been born on this mining world, just like his father before him. He knew nothing but the mines, the work shifts, and the constant fear of the Veilthan guards. The aliens were tall creatures with gray skin and large black eyes that seemed to look right through humans. They wore sleek silver uniforms and carried weapons that could burn a hole through a person in seconds. To them, humans were nothing more than tools that could think and move on their own. Reached his assigned tunnel and began setting up his equipment. The work was simple but dangerous. They had to extract a blue crystal called thoraxite from deep inside the rock. The Veilthan used it to power their ships and cities. Without human labor, their empire would struggle to get enough of the precious mineral. "Jake over here," whispered a voice from the shadows. It was Lisa Parker, one of the few humans who worked in the maintenance section. She was smart, maybe too smart for her own good. The Veilthan didn't like humans who asked too many questions. Jake looked around to make sure no guards were watching, then moved closer to Lisa. She was holding a small piece of broken Veilthan equipment, turning it over in her hands. "Look at this," she said quietly. "I've been studying their machines for months. There's something strange about how they work." "Lisa, you need to be careful," Jake warned. "If they catch you with that ... "I know the risks," she replied. "But Jake, I think I understand something important. Their technology, it doesn't work the same way on us as it does on them." Before Jake could ask what she meant, a loud horn echoed through the tunnels. It was time for the midday meal break. All the workers began moving toward the main chamber, where they would receive their daily ration of gray paste that was supposed to contain all the nutrients a human body needed. As they walked, Jake noticed Sam Rodriguez ahead of them. Sam was older than most of the workers, maybe 45 years old. He had scars on his arms and a way of walking that suggested he had once been a soldier, but that was impossible. Humans weren't allowed to be soldiers. They were only allowed to work. In the main chamber, hundreds of humans sat on metal benches, eating their tasteless meal in silence. The collar around each person's neck would shock them if they spoke too loudly or said anything the Veilthan computers considered inappropriate. Jake was halfway through his meal when he heard a commotion near the front of the room. An elderly man named Frank had collapsed while eating. He was breathing hard and clutching his chest. A young woman rushed to help him. Jake recognized her. It was Amy Chun, who worked in the medical section. Amy knelt beside Frank and began checking his pulse. "He needs medicine," she called out. "His heart is giving out." One of the Veilthan guards approached. The alien was at least 7 feet tall and looked down at the humans with disgust. "The old one is no longer useful," it said in its mechanical-sounding voice. "Remove it from the work roster." "He's not dead," Amy protested. "I can help him if you just let me get some medicine from the medical bay." The guard's large black eyes fixed on Amy. "Medical supplies are not to be wasted on inefficient units." Jake watched in horror as the guard raised its weapon toward the old man. Frank looked up with fear in his eyes, too weak to even move away. "Please," Amy begged. "He's a human being. He has a right to live." The Veilthan guard paused. For a moment, Jake thought it might show mercy. Instead, it turned its weapon toward Amy. "You question Veilthan authority. This violation will be corrected." The energy beam struck Amy in the chest, and she collapsed next to Frank. The old man tried to reach for her, but his strength was gone. Within minutes, both of them were dead. The room fell completely silent. No one moved. No one even breathed loudly. They all knew that any reaction could result in more deaths. The guard looked around the room with satisfaction, then walked away. As if nothing had happened, Jake felt something he had never felt before. It wasn't just sadness or fear, it was anger. Pure, burning anger. He looked around and saw the same feeling in other faces. Sam Rodriguez was staring at the spot where Amy had died, his hands clenched into fists. Lisa Parker was looking at the Veilthan guard with hatred in her eyes. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Amy and Frank. He thought about all the other humans who had died simply because they were no longer useful to the Veilthan. He thought about his grandfather's stories of freedom and wondered if they could ever be more than just stories when the lights dimmed for the sleep. Jake made a decision. He quietly got up from his sleeping mat and made his way through the dim corridors to where he knew Sam Rodriguez slept. He found the older man sitting up, staring at the wall. "Sam," Jake whispered, "we need to talk." Sam looked at him for a long moment. "About what happened today. About what we're going to do about it." Sam nodded slowly. "I was hoping someone would say that. But it's dangerous, Jake. If they catch us... They killed Amy for trying to save a dying man," Jake replied. "How much more dangerous can it get?" The next morning, Jake, Sam, and Lisa met in a forgotten storage room deep in the mining complex. Lisa brought her collection of broken Veilthan equipment. Sam brought knowledge from his past that he had never shared with anyone. Jake brought something else. Hope. "I don't know how we're going to do this," Jake said. "But I know we can't keep living like this. We're not animals, we're not tools. We're human beings, and it's time we started acting like it." Lisa held up a small device she had been working on. "I think I know where to start," she said. "Their technology has weaknesses. We just need to learn how to exploit them." Sam smiled for the first time in years. "Then let's begin." Outside their hiding place, the Veilthan continued their daily routines, unaware that something had changed in the hearts of their slaves. The rebellion had begun with the death of 2 innocent people, and the anger of 3 who refused to accept that this was how things had to be. The Veilthan had called them slaves for 68 years. They were about to learn that humans had a different word for themselves: free. 6 months had passed since Amy Chun died trying to save old Frank. Jake Morrison looked around the hidden room where 23 humans now sat in a circle. What had started as 3 angry people had grown into something much bigger. The rebellion was spreading. Lisa Parker stood at the front of the group, holding a small device in her hands. She had gotten much better at taking apart Veilthan technology. The device looked like a simple metal box, but Lisa had built it from pieces of alien equipment she had stolen over the past months. "This can let us talk to people in other mining areas," Lisa explained. "I tested it yesterday. I made contact with a group in Sector 7. They have 35 people ready to fight." Jake felt excitement and fear at the same time. More people meant more strength, but it also meant more danger. If the Veilthan found out what they were doing, everyone would die. Sam Rodriguez raised his hand. "How many sectors have we reached now?" 3 for sure, Lisa replied. "Maybe 4. The signals are weak, so it's hard to tell sometimes." A new voice spoke from the back of the room. "I can help with that." Everyone turned to look at Dr. Helen Brooks. She was an older woman who worked in the water treatment facility. She had joined their group just 2 weeks ago, but she seemed to know things that the others didn't. "Before the Veilthan came to Earth, I was a scientist," Helen continued. "I studied radio signals and communication systems. If Lisa can get me more equipment, I can make these devices work better." Jake nodded. "What do you need?" "Parts from the main communication tower," Helen said. "It won't be easy to get them, but it's possible." Sam leaned forward. "I've been watching the guard patterns. There might be a way to get inside the communication building. While they talked, Jake noticed someone new sitting near the door. It was Tony Williams, a man who worked in the food distribution center. Tony had a way of talking that made people want to listen to him. He had been bringing new people to their meetings for the past month. "We need to think bigger," Tony said. "There are thousands of humans on this world. Most of them are scared, but they're also angry. They just need someone to show them that fighting back is possible." Lisa looked worried. "If we grow too fast, the Veilthin will notice. They're not stupid. They're not as smart as they think either," Helen said quietly. Everyone looked at her. "I've been studying them for years. The Veilthin have weaknesses." "Big ones." Jake moved closer. "What kind of weaknesses?" Helen smiled in a way that made Jake think she knew secrets that could change everything. "They're fighting a war. Has anyone else noticed that there are fewer guards now than there were a year ago?" Sam nodded. "I thought I was imagining it." "You weren't," Helen said. "The Veilthin Empire is fighting another alien race called the Korthini. The war is going badly for them. They need every soldier they can get." Tony's eyes lit up. "That means they can't spare troops to watch us as closely." "It means more than that," Helen continued. "It means they need us. They need the Thoraxite. We mine. Without it, their ships can't fight. Without their ships, they lose the war." Jake felt his heart beating faster. "So if we stop mining, they have a problem," Helen finished. "A big problem." Lisa was quiet for a moment, thinking. "But if we just stop working, they'll kill us all. Not if we're smart about it," Sam said. "We don't stop all at once. We slow down. We have accidents. We break equipment. We make it look like normal problems." Helen nodded. "And while we do that, we prepare for something bigger." Over the next few weeks, strange things began happening in the mining complex. Equipment broke down more often than usual. Tunnel supports collapsed, forcing work crews to spend days digging out blocked passages. Power systems failed, leaving entire sections in darkness. The Veilthin guards grew frustrated, but they blamed the problems on human stupidity and the age of the equipment. They never suspected that these accidents were planned. Jake's group had grown to 50 people spread across 4 different sectors. Lisa had built 6 communication devices, and Helen had improved them so they could reach mining complexes on other parts of the planet. The news they received was exciting. Human workers everywhere were starting to fight back. Some groups had stolen weapons from guard posts. Others had taken control of food distribution centers. A few had even captured small Veilthin vehicles. But the news also brought warnings. The Veilthin were starting to investigate the increase in problems. Commander Zeethkar, the alien who controlled their sector, had called for a full inspection of all equipment and work areas. "We need to do something big," Tony said during one of their secret meetings. "Something that shows everyone that the Veilthin can be beaten." Sam had been thinking the same thing. "There's an armory in the administrative building. It's where they keep the weapons for the guards. If we could take it... Lisa looked scared. "That's not breaking the equipment or slowing down work. That's open rebellion. If we fail, if we don't try, we'll spend the rest of our lives as slaves," Jake said. "And our children will too." Helen had been quiet during the discussion, but now she spoke up. "I have information that might help. The Veilthin get supply ships once a month. The next one comes in 4 days. Most of the guards will be busy with the unloading." Sam nodded. "That could be our chance." Jake looked around the room at the faces of his friends. 3 months ago, they had been just workers, afraid to even speak too loudly. Now they were planning to steal weapons from their alien masters. Who's willing to do this? Jake asked. Every hand in the room went up. They spent the next 3 days planning every detail. Sam drew maps of the administrative building from memory. Lisa figured out how to disable the alarm systems. Helen identified which weapons would be most useful. Tony prepared speeches to give to other workers after they succeeded. On the night of the raid, 12 humans crept through the shadows toward the administrative building. Jake's heart was pounding so hard he was sure the guards would hear it. But they reached the building without being spotted. Lisa's work on the alarm system paid off. The doors opened silently, and they slipped inside. The armory was on the second floor, behind 3 locked doors. Sam had studied Veilthan locks for weeks, and now his practice showed. Each door opened after just a few minutes of work. Inside the armory, they found more weapons than they had hoped for. Energy rifles, portable shield generators, and boxes of power cells. They took everything they could carry and left the rest hidden for later. As they prepared to leave, Jake heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Veilthan guards were making their rounds early. The humans froze, weapons in their hands, ready to fight if they had to. But the footsteps passed by without stopping. The guards never looked into the armory. 20 minutes later, Jake and his team were back in the tunnels, carrying enough weapons to arm their entire group. The next morning, Commander Zithkar discovered the theft. His roar of anger echoed through the entire complex. He ordered immediate searches of all human quarters and work areas. They found nothing. The weapons were hidden in places the Veilthan never thought to look. Jake smiled as he watched the alien commander growing more frustrated with each failed search. That night, Jake stood before a group of 100 humans in a vast underground chamber that Helen had discovered. In his hands, he held one of the stolen energy rifles. For 68 years, they have told us we are nothing, Jake said. They have told us we are animals. They have told us we exist only to serve them. The crowd was silent, but Jake could see the fire in their eyes. Tonight, we prove them wrong, he continued. Tonight, we show them that humans bow to no one. He raised the weapon above his head. We are not their slaves. We are free people, and it's time we acted like it. The cheer that rose from the crowd was loud enough to shake dust from the ceiling. For the first time in decades, humans were shouting. Not in pain or fear, but in defiance. The rebellion had found its voice, and the Veilthan were about to hear it. The explosion lit up the night sky like a second sun. Jake Morrison watched from the hills as the mining complex where he had spent his entire life burned below him. Orange flames reached high into the darkness, and smoke covered the stars. 3 days had passed since the humans had taken complete control of Mining Complex 7. It had been easier than anyone expected. The Veilthan guards were outnumbered 10 to 1, and the stolen weapons worked perfectly in human hands. But Jake knew the victory would not last long. The Veilthan would send soldiers to take back the complex. When they came, they would kill everyone, even the humans who had not joined the rebellion. We had to get everyone out, Lisa Parker said, standing beside Jake on the hillside. We couldn't leave them there to die. Jake nodded, but his heart was heavy. Behind him, nearly 2,000 humans sat in small groups around campfires. They were free, but they had nowhere to go. The planet's surface was mostly desert and rock. Without the mining complex, they had no food, no water, and no shelter. Sam Rodriguez approached them, carrying one of Lisa's communication devices. His face was grim. I've got news from the other complexes. It's not good. Jake turned to listen. Over the past weeks, Lisa had made contact with human resistance groups on 7 different worlds. The news had been encouraging at first. Rebellions were starting everywhere. But now Sam's expression told a different story. Complex 4 was destroyed this morning, Sam said. The Veilthan used their warships. They didn't even try to take it back. They just burned everything from space. Lisa's face went pale. How? Many people were inside. All of them, 3,000 humans. Jake felt sick. 3,000 people dead. because they had dared to fight for freedom. What about the other complexes? Complex 2 surrendered after they heard what happened to 4. Complex 9 is still fighting, but they're surrounded. They won't last much longer. The weight of responsibility settled on Jake's shoulders like a heavy stone. He had helped start this rebellion. Now thousands of people were dying because of choices he had made. Dr. Helen Brooks joined their group, carrying a tablet she had built from Veilthan technology. "I've been monitoring their communications," she said. "Admiral Keffer is coming." Sam's expression darkened. "I've heard that name before. He's the one they send when they want to make examples. How long do we have?" Jake asked. 2 days, Helen replied. "Maybe 3 if we're lucky." Tony Williams walked up to them, leading a group of 20 humans who had been chosen as group leaders. "The people are asking questions, Jake. They want to know what we're going to do next." Jake looked at the faces around him. These people had trusted him to lead them to freedom. Instead, he had led them into the desert to die. "I don't know," Jake said honestly. "I thought we could take the complex and hold it. I didn't think they would just destroy everything." "None of us did," Helen said. "But we can't give up now. I've been studying the Veilthan communications for months. I've learned things that could help us." She activated her tablet, and a map of the local star systems appeared on the screen. "The Veilthan Empire is smaller than they want us to believe. They only control 15 star systems. And they're losing the war against the Korthani." Lisa leaned closer to look at the map. "How badly are they losing?" "Badly enough that they're pulling troops from garrison duty to fight on the front lines," Helen replied. "That's why there were so few guards at our complex. They need every soldier they can get." Sam studied the map. "If they're that desperate, why are they destroying mining complexes? Don't they need the thoraxite we produce?" Helen smiled in a way that reminded Jake of a teacher who was about to reveal an important lesson. "Because they're not just fighting the Korthani. They're fighting themselves." She touched the screen, and the image changed to show a different star system. "This is the Veilthan homeworld. I've been intercepting their government communications. They're having what humans would call a civil war. Some Veilthan want to keep fighting the Korthani. Others want to make peace and focus on keeping control of their slave worlds." Tony's eyes widened. "They're fighting each other?" "More than that," Helen continued. "Their technology is breaking down. The element they need to power their advanced systems is running out. They've been strip mining it from conquered worlds for decades, but the supply is almost gone." Jake felt something he hadn't felt in days: hope. "What does that mean for us?" "It means we're not just fighting guards and local soldiers anymore," Helen said. "We're fighting an empire that's falling apart from the inside." Lisa was already thinking ahead. "If their technology is failing, maybe we can make it fail faster," Helen nodded. "I've been working on that. Remember how I told you that Veilthan technology doesn't work well with human brain patterns? I think I can use that to create a computer virus." Sam looked confused. "A virus that makes computers sick?" "Something like that," Helen replied. "A program that gets into their systems and makes them stop working. If I can get it into their main network, it could spread to every Veilthan facility in this sector." Jake felt his excitement growing. "How do we get it into their network?" "We need to get close to a major facility," Helen said. "Something with a direct connection to their homeworld communications." Lisa pointed to a spot on the map. "What about the orbital station? The one that controls all the mining operations on this planet?" Helen studied the location. "That could work, but getting there would be almost impossible. It's in space, and we don't have ships." "Actually, we might," Sam said quietly. Everyone looked at him. "When I was checking the equipment in the abandoned areas of the complex, I found something interesting. There's a Veilthan shuttle in the maintenance bay. It's been there for months." Jake's heart began to race. "Does it work?" "I don't know. But Lisa's good with their technology. Maybe she could figure it out. Before anyone could respond, one of the lookouts came running toward them. "Ships!" he shouted. "Veilthan ships coming from the north." Jake grabbed his weapon and looked toward the sky. 3 dark shapes were moving against the stars, getting bigger as they approached. They were still far away, but closing fast. "Everyone pack up," Jake shouted. "We're moving now." The camp exploded into activity. Humans grabbed their few possessions and began moving toward the rocky hills where the ships couldn't easily follow. But Jake knew they couldn't run forever. Eventually, the Veilthan would corner them. As they ran, Helen grabbed Jake's arm. "The shuttle," she said. "If we can get to it, we might have a chance." Jake looked back at the burning remains of the mining complex. The shuttle was in there somewhere, probably buried under tons of rubble. Getting to it would be dangerous, maybe impossible, but it was the only chance they had. "Sam, take everyone to the caves in the eastern hills," Jake ordered. "Lisa, Helen, Tony, you're with me. We're going back." Sam stared at him. "Jake, that's suicide. The place is crawling with Veilthan soldiers by now." "Maybe," Jake replied. "But if we can get that shuttle working, we can hit them where they don't expect it. We can take the fight to them instead of just running." He looked at the faces of his friends. "I won't order anyone to come with me. This is volunteer only." Lisa stepped forward first. "I'm in. If there's a shuttle, I can probably get it working." Helen nodded. "You'll need my virus to make this worthwhile." Tony hesitated for a moment, then joined them. "Someone needs to document this. If we fail, people should know we tried." Sam shook his head, but he was smiling. "You're all crazy, but I'm not letting you go alone." As the 5 humans made their way back toward the burning complex, Jake felt something he had never experienced before. Not hope, exactly, but something stronger. Determination. They might die in the next few hours, but they wouldn't die as slaves. They would die as free humans, fighting for their people and their future. The Veilthan had made a mistake when they destroyed the mining complex. They thought they were ending the rebellion. Instead, they had just made it stronger. Jake Morrison and his friends were about to show them what angry humans could do when they had nothing left to lose. The Veilthan shuttle shook violently as Lisa Parker tried to control it. She had never flown anything before, but the controls were simpler than she expected. The hard part had been getting the engines to start after months of sitting in the wreckage. Jake Morrison sat beside her, watching the planet shrink below them. It had taken 6 hours to dig the shuttle out of the collapsed maintenance bay. 6 hours while Veilthan soldiers searched the ruins above them. Twice they had almost then discovered. In the back of the small ship, Helen Brooks worked on her laptop, making final changes to the computer virus. Tony Williams sat next to her, recording everything with a stolen Veilthan camera. Sam Rodriguez checked their weapons for the 3rd time. "How much longer until we reach the orbital station?" Jake asked. Lisa looked at the navigation screen. 20 minutes, maybe less. Helen looked up from her computer. "The virus is ready. Once I plug this into their main computer, it should spread through their entire network within hours." "Should?" Sam asked. "Nothing is certain," Helen admitted. "But I've tested it on every piece of Veilthan equipment we've captured. It works every time." Jake nodded. The plan was simple, which made it more likely to succeed. They would dock at the orbital station, pretending to be returning from a patrol mission. Helen would upload her virus to the main computer. Then they would steal one of the larger ships and escape before anyone realized what had happened. The orbital station appeared ahead of them, a massive metal structure that looked like a city floating in space. Hundreds of lights dotted its surface, and ships moved in and out of its docking bays like insects around a hive. Lisa activated the communication system. A Veilthan voice spoke to them in the alien language. Lisa had learned enough words to respond properly. She told them they were returning from a security patrol and requested permission to dock. The station granted permission and assigned them to Docking Bay 7. Lisa guided the shuttle toward the correct bay, trying to look like she had done this many times before. As they docked, Jake felt his heart beating fast. If the Veilthan discovered who they really were, they would all be dead within minutes. But they had come too far to turn back now. The docking bay was mostly empty. Only a few Veilthan technicians were working on other ships. They barely looked at the 5 humans as they walked past, wearing stolen Veilthan uniforms that Lisa had modified to fit them. Helen led the way through the station corridors. She had studied the stolen blueprints for weeks and knew exactly where to find the main computer center. The virus was hidden inside a small device that looked like a normal Veilthan repair tool. They passed dozens of aliens in the hallways. Some were soldiers, others were technicians or administrators. None of them paid attention to the humans. To the Veilthan, all humans looked the same. The computer center was protected by 2 guards, but Helen had prepared for this. She approached them with her fake repair tool and explained in broken Veilthan that she needed to fix a problem with the communication systems. The guards looked bored and waved her through without checking her credentials. Jake couldn't believe how easy it was. The Veilthan were so confident in their superiority that they never imagined humans could infiltrate their most important facility. Inside the computer center, massive machines hummed with power. Lights flashed on dozens of control panels, and screens showed information flowing between the station and other parts of the Veilthan Empire. Helen found the main data port and connected her device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a small light on the device turned green. "It's uploading," Helen whispered. 30 seconds. Those 30 seconds felt like hours. Jake watched the door, expecting Veilthan soldiers to burst in at any moment. Sam and Tony stood ready with their weapons. Lisa monitored the hallway through a small window. The light turned blue. Helen disconnected the device and put it back in her toolkit. "Done," she said. "The virus is in their system." They walked out of the computer center as calmly as they had entered. The guards didn't even look up from their conversation. In the hallway, Jake saw other humans wearing work uniforms. Most of them were cleaning floors or carrying supplies. They had been slaves for so long that the Veilthan saw them as part of the background. But Jake noticed something else. When these slave workers saw him and his friends, their eyes showed recognition. Somehow, word of the rebellion had reached even here. The humans on the station knew that their people were fighting back. They made their way to the main hangar bay where the larger ships were kept. Lisa had identified a cargo vessel that could carry all of them and had weapon systems they could use. As they approached the ship, alarms began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and Veilthan voices announced an emergency over the speakers. "They found the virus," Helen said. Jake grabbed his weapon. "How long before it spreads?" "It's already spreading," Helen replied, looking at a small monitor on her wrist. "Look at this." The screen showed a map of the local area with dots representing Veilthan facilities. One by one, the dots were changing from green to red. Each red dot is a facility where the virus has infected their computers, Helen explained. Military bases, communication centers, power stations. They're all going down. Sam grinned. "How many facilities are affected?" 12 so far, and it's accelerating." They reached the cargo ship just as Veilthan soldiers entered the hangar bay. The aliens spotted them immediately and began shooting. Energy beams flashed past Jake's head as he ran toward the ship's entrance. Lisa was already at the controls, starting the engines. The ship lifted off the hangar floor just as more soldiers arrived. Jake fired back at them through the closing door, buying time for their escape. The cargo ship burst out of the hangar bay into open space. Behind them, the orbital station was in chaos. Ships were launching in all directions, and explosions lit up several sections of the structure. "The virus is affecting their flight control systems," Helen reported. "Half their ships can't navigate properly." Lisa piloted them away from the station, but Jake knew they weren't safe yet. Veilthan warships would be coming after them soon. "Where do we go now?" Tony asked. Jake had been thinking about that question during their escape. "Helen, can you contact the other resistance groups?" Helen worked on her equipment for a few minutes. "I'm getting signals from 4 different worlds. The virus has reached all of them. Veilthan systems are failing everywhere." "Good," Jake said. "Tell them to attack now while the Veilthan are confused." Over the next few hours, reports came in. From across the sector, human resistance groups were striking Veilthan facilities on every world. With their computer systems failing, the aliens couldn't coordinate their defenses effectively. But the best news came from an unexpected source. A human named Marcus Johnson, who was leading the resistance on the industrial world of Wolf 359C, reported that an entire Veilthan fleet had surrendered to them. "Their ships lost navigation and life support," Marcus explained over the radio. "The crews had to choose between dying in space or surrendering to us." Jake felt amazement wash over him. 6 months ago, he had been a simple mine worker. Now humans were capturing Veilthan warships. Lisa had learned to pilot their stolen cargo ship better and was heading toward Wolf 359C to join up with Marcus and his people. Behind them, the orbital station was still burning, its systems completely destroyed by Helen's virus. "Jake," Helen said, looking at her monitoring equipment, "I'm picking up communications from the Veilthan homeworld. Their government is in complete panic. The virus has spread to their core systems." "What are they saying?" Helen listened for a moment, then translated. "They're calling for all military units to return home immediately. They're abandoning their outer colonies to protect their homeworld." Sam laughed. "They're running away." "Not just running," Helen corrected. "They're evacuating. The Supreme Overlord has declared a state of emergency. They're pulling back to their home system and abandoning everything else." Jake looked out at the stars and thought about all the humans who were still slaves on distant worlds. Soon they would be free. The Veilthan Empire was collapsing, and it was happening because 5 humans had been brave enough to steal a shuttle and plant a virus. "Tony," Jake said, "make sure you're recording all of this. People need to know how this happened." Tony held up his camera. "I've been recording everything since we left the planet. The whole galaxy will know that humans don't stay slaves." As their ship flew through space toward their next destination, Jake felt something he had never experienced before. Not just hope or determination, but certainty. The Veilthan had called humans primitive and weak. They had treated them like animals for 68 years, but now their empire was crumbling, brought down by the very people they had enslaved. The virus spreading through their systems was like a mirror of the rebellion spreading through their territory. Both were unstoppable now. Jake Morrison had been born a slave, but he would not die as one. None of them would. The age of Veilthan rule was ending, and the age of human freedom was about to begin. 2 years had passed since the virus brought down the Veilthan Empire. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the human ship Freedom's Dawn, looking down at the planet that had once been the center of Veilthan power. The alien homeworld was nothing like Jake had imagined. Instead of the gleaming cities and advanced technology he expected, he saw empty ruins covered in strange purple plants. The great towers that once reached toward the sky had fallen down. The rivers that used to power their machines had dried up. "It's hard to believe they once ruled half the galaxy," Lisa Parker said, joining Jake at the window. She wore the uniform of the United Human Colonies engineer now, with the rank of director on her collar. Jake nodded. Helen was right about their technology. When it failed, everything failed. Below them, Small groups of Veilthan moved through the ruins like ghosts. They were the survivors, maybe a few million out of the billions who had lived on this world before the collapse. Their great empire had lasted for centuries, but it took only 2 years to completely fall apart. Dr. Helen Brooks approached them, carrying a tablet with the latest reports from the other human colonies. She had been elected as the chief scientist of the new human government, but she still preferred to work in the field rather than sit in meetings. The rescue ships have finished evacuating the last human slaves from the Outer Rim, Helen reported. That's over 3 million people brought home in the past year. Sam Rodriguez joined their group, walking slowly with the help of a cane. He had been injured in the final battle for the Wolf 359 system, but he refused to retire. As the first general of Human Defense Forces, he said he had too much work left to do. Any word from the Corthany? Sam asked. Helen checked her tablet. They're still confused about what happened to their enemies. Their scouts found the abandoned Veilthan colonies, but they can't figure out where everyone went. Jake smiled. The Corthany had been preparing for a final battle against the Veilthan Empire. Instead, they found empty worlds and silent space stations. The great enemy they had fought for decades had simply vanished. Tony Williams came up the stairs from the lower deck, carrying his camera as always. He was making a documentary about the fall of the Veilthan Empire, interviewing survivors and recording the empty cities for future generations to see. I just finished talking to some of the Veilthan refugees, Tony said. They're asking for permission to settle on one of the outer planets. Jake looked at his friends. This was the question they had been avoiding for months. What should humans do with their former masters? How many of them are left? Lisa asked. About 50,000 on this world, Helen replied. Maybe twice that. Many scattered across other planets. Most of them are children or elderly. The adults died when their cities lost power. Sam's expression was hard. They enslaved us for 68 years. They killed millions of humans. Why should we help them? Because we're not them, Jake said quietly. We're better than that. Amy Chun had been right, all those years ago when she died trying to save old Frank. Every person had a right to live, even if they were your former enemies. What are you thinking? Lisa asked. Jake turned away from the window. I'm thinking we give them a chance. One planet, far from human space. They can rebuild their society there, but they never get to leave. And they never get advanced technology. Again, Helen nodded slowly. A quarantine world, it could work. They won't like it, Sam warned. They don't have to like it, Jake replied. It's better than what they gave us. As president of the United Human Colonies, Jake had to make these difficult decisions. He had never wanted to be a leader, but the other humans trusted him. They remembered how he had started the rebellion in a mining tunnel, and they believed he would make the right choices. A young officer approached their group. Mr. President, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Jake felt his heart skip. Earth, the planet where humanity had begun, and where the Veilthan had first enslaved them. Human ships had reached it 6 months ago, but Jake had been too busy with other worlds to visit yet. Put it on the main screen, Jake ordered. The image that appeared showed a woman standing in front of a city that Jake didn't recognize. The buildings were new, built from materials that gleamed in the sunlight, but the most amazing thing was the color. Everything was green. Trees, grass, and flowers covered every surface. President Morrison, this is Governor Maria Santos reporting. From New Angeles, the woman said. I'm happy to tell you that Earth's restoration is ahead of schedule. The Veilthan strip mining operations only damaged the surface. The planet's core systems are healthy. Jake felt tears in his eyes. Earth was healing. The world where his grandfather had been born free was becoming beautiful again. We've also discovered something interesting in the old Veilthan records. Maria continued. They weren't the first species to conquer other worlds. The archives show that they were once slaves themselves, conquered by a race called the Vorthak about 2,000 years ago. Helen looked surprised. So the Veilthan learned to be masters from their own masters? It seems that way, Maria said. The Vorthak Empire fell the same way the Veilthan Empire did. Their technology failed, and their slaves became free. The cycle repeated itself. Jake thought about this information. The Veilthan had been slaves once, just like humans. When they became free, they decided to enslave others instead of ending the cycle. That was their choice, and it was what destroyed them in the end. Thank you for the report, Governor Santos, Jake said. We'll be visiting Earth soon. The transmission ended, and Jake's friends gathered around him. So what happens now? Tony asked. We freed all the slaves, the Veilthan are defeated, and Earth is healing. What does humanity do next? Jake looked out at the stars. There were thousands of worlds out there, and probably other species that needed help. The galaxy was a big place, and humans had a lot of work to do. We explore, Jake said. We learn. We help other species who are still enslaved. And we make sure this never happens again. Lisa smiled. A galaxy where everyone is free. Why not? Jake replied. We've already proven that empires can fall. Maybe we can prove that freedom can spread too. Sam laughed, something he did more often these days. From mining slaves to galactic liberators. Not bad for a day's work. As their ship prepared to leave the dead Veilthan homeworld, Jake took one last look at the ruins below. The great towers were gone, but small flowers were growing in the cracks of the broken streets. Life was returning to this world, just like it had returned to Earth. The Veilthan had called humans slaves, animals, primitive creatures fit only for labor. They had been wrong about everything. Humans weren't primitive, they were adaptable. They weren't weak, they were persistent. They weren't animals. They were free people who refused to stay in chains. 10 years from now, Jake knew, this dead world would be green again. The Veilthan survivors would build simple homes and grow their own food. They would tell their children stories about the great empire their ancestors once ruled. But those stories would seem like myths. The children would be free, even if they didn't understand what that meant yet. Jake Morrison had been born in a mining tunnel on a distant world, the child of slaves who had never known freedom. But he would die as the president of the United Human Colonies, surrounded by friends who had helped him change the galaxy. The Veilthan Empire had lasted for centuries. But human freedom would last forever. As the Freedom's Dawn jumped to hyperspace. Heading home to the growing human colonies, Jake made a silent promise. Never again would humanity bow to masters. Never again would any species be allowed to enslave others. While humans had the power to stop them, the age of empires was ending. The age of freedom had begun, and it would spread to every star in the galaxy.